Yeah, that's it. Now you need to switch. Yeah, it's okay. Oh no, not red. Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Gender Day panel hosted by Banque Misr and supported by the Green for Growth Fund for Technical Assistance Facility with the assistance of the European Union under the EU for Energy Initiative. The panel discussion today will be on gender equity and access to green and SME finance. The panel is also being live streamed, so a very warm welcome to those of you that are joining us online. I am Sue Barrett. I'm EBRD's Director, Head of Infrastructure for Turkey, the Middle East and Africa. And I'd like to start by inviting our keynote speakers to open the session today. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Mohammed El Atrebi, who is the Chairman of Banque Misr. And he is going to give some opening remarks and also show a video on Banque Misr's sustainability journey. So Mohammed, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Oops.
Good afternoon. I am blessed today to be surrounded by 7 beautiful ladies in the panel, and this is the real women's empowerment. Dr. Maya Morsi, President of Egypt National Council for Women. Dr. Heike Harmgaard, Managing Director for CIMED at EBRD. Ms. Bursha Kapruz, Finance in Motion Regional Director, Turkey, Middle East and North Africa. Ms. Cacilde Brunière, CEO at Agence Française de Développement. Ms. Amy Lewinstra, Acting Global Co-Manager Gender and Economic Inclusion, IFC. Ms. Rawia Mansour, Chairperson of Ramsco for Trade and Distribution, and our esteemed moderator, Ms. Sue Barrett, Director, Head of Infrastructure for Turkey, Middle East and Africa at EBRD. Our distinguished guests, it is my privilege and pleasure on behalf of Banque Misr to have you with us today in this important high-level panel discussion, Gender Equity, Access to Green and SME Finance, to discuss how to advance gender equity in green and SME finance in Egypt and beyond, and to better integrate women in sustainable and climate finance. As the world convenes in Africa, for the COP27 in Egypt, Sharm el-Sheikh, this Africa Cup is set in recognition of Africa's role in averting a climate disaster without compromising the continent's growth and poverty reduction. Gender equity is one of the pillars of a peaceful, wealthy, and sustainable world. Empowering women economically is essential to the health and social development of families, communities, and countries. As stated by Kofi Annan, former UN Secretary General, gender equality is more than a goal in itself. It is a precondition for meeting the challenge of reducing poverty, promoting sustainable development, and building good governance. When women are living safe, fulfilled, and having productive lives, they can reach their full potential, contributing their skills to the workforce, and can raise happier and healthier children. Past experience exposed that one of the main reasons that hinders the growth of women in business is access to resources, and especially finance. According to the IFC, more than 1 billion women still do not use or have access to the financial system, and an estimation of $300 billion gap in financing exists for former women-owned small business, and more than 70% of women-owned small and medium enterprises have inadequate or no access to financial service. Given the barriers and existing inequalities that face women in access to finance, dedicating resources and flows of funding to enable them better contribute to the climate agenda is urgently needed. Gender is to be taken into consideration when developing resources mobilization strategies, applying climate finance instruments, and ensuring equal participation in the deployment of financial resources. Primarily at the local level, gender-sensitive financing is gaining wider recognition in light of the manifested benefits of gender equality and women's empowerment climate action and outcomes. Researchers reveal the need for resource mobilization, strategies, and financing policies of different stakeholders to clearly reflect women's needs and realities within climate action plans and governing instruments, enabling women to effectively contribute to the implementation of climate-related action plans. Additionally, investing in women-led climate-related projects through women financial inclusion, promoting their access to finance and credit facilities are among the key factors which will enable women to better participate in climate action. Climate change is the greatest environmental challenge humankind has ever faced, and the impact will be most severe for the world's poorest and most marginalized, including women. However, women are not just victims. Given the opportunity, they are powerful agents of change. Women comprise approximately 43% of the agricultural labor force in developing countries. It is estimated that when women are provided with the same access to resources as men, women can increase their agricultural yields by 20 to 30%. Small and medium enterprises, SMEs, play a crucial role at the backbone of many African economies, accounting to up to 90% of all businesses in Africa, significantly contributing to GDP growth and employment. SMEs are important drivers of entrepreneurship and employment for women, youth, and vulnerable groups. Yet, they face difficult challenges in growing their business. Primary among these challenges is limited access to formal financial capital at an affordable interest rate, leading them to depend on other sources of finance like savings and informal finances services. This challenge is further compounded for women-owned SMEs, which struggle with limited to access, but also usage and quality of financial service problems faced by SMEs in general and women-owned businesses in particular. There are 2.5 million SMEs in Egypt, representing 90% of the active enterprises in the country, and contributes to about 75% of the labor force, but often struggle to access financing. Women-owned SMEs in particular have estimated credit demand of $283 million and $246 million of potential deposits. In Egypt, women economic empowerment is a key national priority, highlighted as one complements as one of the 4 pillars of the 2030 National Women Empowerment Strategy, which complements Egypt's vision and roadmap for 2030. Empowering women is a key to reducing poverty and increasing economic growth. Egypt has been pushing for financial inclusion with great focus on women, coming within the framework of the effort exerted towards women economic empowerment. Recent financial inclusion figures published by the CBE have shown that women financial inclusion has increased by 171% between 2016 to 2021, with 16 million women owning transactions account. Financial inclusion in 2014 was around penetration 15%. Now we are talking about 54%. Acknowledging the evident impact of climate change on Africa and specifically on the large women population, we believe that women-led business have a strong role to play in climate action. We therefore are hosting this important panel on Gender Day at COP27 to ensure women access to SME and green finance for a just transition. The banking sector role in channeling capital to climate solution will continue to grow as we design and introduce new green financing products. It is equally important that we work with our partners in enabling design, access, and usage of quality SME and green finance products to advance gender equity, integrating women in sustainable and climate finance. Please join me in watching Banque Misr short sustainability awareness video. Thank you all.
Our goal is not only making profit, but also creating opportunities through providing financial opportunities for all, ensuring financial inclusion for all segments, sustainable financing, equal opportunity. We focus on the main pillars supporting Egypt's Vision 2030, the environmental pillar, the social pillar, governance. Working together for prosperity in the communities that we operate in. We work in 9 countries and have made a difference in the lives of 13 million families. Our services are provided by over 20,000 of our employees in Egypt and thousands of vendors and business partners. We contribute to community development activities with over 1.5 billion Egyptian pounds annually in the fields of human development, health, education, villages most in need, and breadwinning women. Micro, small, and medium indicators. Express Loan, the first digital loan in Egypt. Women Portfolio Trend. The first state-owned bank to announce alignment with and adherence to global sustainability standards. We were awarded by several international institutions and titled the best bank in the field of sustainability, sustainable financing solutions, and social responsibility. Banque Misr.
Mohammed, thank you very much for those very powerful messages you gave about why women should be at the heart of climate policy and addressing climate change. You also made some very important comments there about the role that women SMEs can play in contributing towards this global challenge, but how important it is to make sure they have equitable access to green finance. So some very powerful messages there, and very interesting and inspiring to see the work that Banque Misr is doing to help both the green agenda, providing green finance, but also supporting women's access to finance. So thank you very much for that, for your comments, and also the wonderful video that we just saw. I'd like now, you're very welcome. I'd like now to ask Dr. Maya Morsi, who is the president of Egypt's National Council for Women, to give her keynote remarks. Maya, the floor is yours.
I'm stunned. I'm beyond stunned. Thank you, Mr. Muhammad, for an excellent statement. And once a man is inviting on a gender day, I'm seeing that almost there is a 50-50. It's working right now. Thank you. Once a man is inviting, so I'm making sure, or he's making sure that it's a 50% representation. 3 men here, 4 women there. But actually what is impressing me is that this is one of the very special banks to my heart, and that this bank, if it's announced as the best sustainable bank, it's actually a bank that is walking the talk. And I was impressed by having a distribution, the gift that is distributing in the hall right now. And I think it's made by Egyptian women, not only made by 100% Egyptian cotton, but it's made by Egyptian women. And this is a value in itself. So a bank is talking about sustainability, talking about climate change, talking about women's empowerment in the COP27 Gender Day. And I'm seeing real empowerment and economic empowerment on the ground. Mr. Mohammed, you are a gender champion, and sitting among all these women, you are really Egyptian gender champion. Thank you very much. And I can make sure as well, and I can say a statement that this bank, because I know a lot of women working in this bank, they see it as a second home. They are committed to the work in the bank, and they are committed to the development of the bank, and they are committed mostly to the image of the bank. So thank you for everyone who had collected the bags to keep the message for formal, the picture formal. You are women of fine art, and the finesse of the event. So back to the keynote speech. Actually, after more than 16 regional meetings today, and in the Gender Day in COP27, Egypt has launched the Presidential Initiative African Women Climate Adaptive Priorities, the AUCAP. And it's a resilient water, energy, food, just transition with a gender lens, focused on women empowerment in Africa, in whole Africa. We have more than 12 countries to this moment with us. We have the UN Women, we have the UNDP, we have private sector, and we still want banks. But what is interesting in this, it might be some political messages, some economic empowerment, some is raising awareness, and some working on education and STEM education. But the most important thing is financing. Without financing for small enterprises, medium enterprises in the climate change investment with women, it's very hard to reach what we want to reach. And I'm really happy also that Banque Misr had got Rawia Mansour as a champion, a women champion in the private sector, working on zero, and I'm repeating, the zero waste agriculture. This is an iconic project. This is something that if we are seeing scalability, we have to study with her, and we have to help her on scalability of such a project. But what we want to have a focus on is that if we want climate change, resilience, women are the resilient factor of climate change. And if we want to protect the globe and we protect the planet, women are the solutions. And if we want to ensure that the money that you're lending to anyone in the whole world will be returning back to you as an investment bank, it's going to be women. But the problem with the banks, and I will not say the Miss Bank actually, but the banking sector, if a woman is entering with a project, they will give her little money for little project. But if a man is entering with a mega project that is not yet studied well, and with a big package of money, they will give the money to the man because they are confident with men. Please, we have with these sessions, we have with this dynamics, with Banque Misr in Egypt, really walking the talk and supporting women in financial inclusion, supporting women opening banks, supporting women on the grassroots level, walking forward to Africa as well. I think we have to change the dynamics. If IFC, World Bank, business sectors, mega banks should really invest in national banks if we want to walk the talk, if we want to really empower women in the climate change agenda. And it's 12 months from now. We're going to go to COP28. COP28 is in UAE, and I would love to have the same podium, the same pavilion with Banque Misr, and we can say that we have lended to African women in 10 countries, in 2 countries, in 3 countries, this amount of money. But from where they would get the money? We have to help them. International banking system has to help if we really, again, want to walk the talk. African women are really in need, and this is a COP for implementation. And if we want to also help African women, we have to understand that they are actually the most privileged in the continent with their children and with their projects. And I'm so happy, and I was so delighted for the invitation from Mr. Mohammed. And I realized, are you doing the event on the Gender Day? He said, yes. I thought the event will not be on the Gender Day, but this is a real commitment. And you're starring, Mohammed, usually you are really starring in the Gender Day, and we will make it a highlight of the Egyptian pavilion of the Gender Day with the National Council for Women and the other women ministers, that we have a champion in Egypt, and the champion is Banque Misr. Thank you very much.
Dr. Meyer, thank you very much for those very powerful comments as well on the need to really empower women and particularly to make sure that they have equity access to finance. Very, very important so they can make their full contribution to the gender challenge, the climate challenge. I would like to introduce the panel by also giving my own introductory comments, and then I will introduce the panel speakers. So let me just start by saying that COP27 is an Africa COP. It's an implementation COP. An effective implementation of climate action is not complete without addressing the gender gap, as you've heard from Mohammed and also Dr. Meyer, and in particular, the access to finance on the continent. Women represent 80% of the global population displaced by climate change. Their roles as primary caregivers make them more vulnerable to floods and drought, especially in agriculture, where most of the women in Africa work. Women constitute a vital fabric in the African entrepreneurship sector. According to the World Bank, 58% of the continent's self-employed population is women. They contribute 13% to Africa's total GDP. And yet women do not have adequate access to finance, as you heard from Dr. Meyer. It's estimated that the financing gap, as Mohammed, I think, mentioned, is around $42 billion. So Africa needs to continue to accelerate the mobilization of green and climate finance for green economic transition in order to adapt to the growing and disproportionately acute impacts of climate change. It's estimated that Africa needs about $277 billion every year to implement its NDCs under the Paris Agreement and to satisfy its 2030 climate goals, with the southern part of the continent facing the largest financing gaps. And in the process, mobilizing more finance for climate action, it will be critical to include women equitably in that process. The climate crisis is compounded by gender inequality and presents the greatest challenge of our time. It's a rising threat to health, safety, and security of women, girls, and entire communities. And this is even more pronounced in one of the most vulnerable continents to climate change, Africa. Addressing two of the most critical SDGs together, gender equality and climate action, has the powerful impact of unlocking opportunities for improving quality of life to the current and future generations, including safeguarding the environment, eliminating poverty, bettering healthcare and well-being. Increasingly, the data and research reveal a clear correlation between gender, social equality, and climate change, demonstrating that women's empowerment is imperative for just transition and the effective global climate action. So climate-related projects and policies, including financial, that involve women are proven to be more effective, as stated by the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. In the same vein, climate change investments where women's meaningful participation is lacking have a lower likelihood of achieving targeted outcomes and aggravate the existing gender inequalities. So climate-focused, women-led companies are critical catalysts for the realization of the SDGs. And it is hence critical that we address access to SME financing and green financing on Gender Day at COP27. So I'd now like to turn to you, Dr. Heike, if I may, and ask you to explain to us how EBRD is supporting financial institutions in growing green finance instruments in Africa, and how can gender be incorporated into the green financial projects?
Thank you, Sue. And a big thank you, of course, to the chairman. It's been it's a great honor to be here today and talk about some of the work we're doing with banks. But I mean, I just remember when we signed, actually, not so long ago, a 100 million facility with green financing with Banque Misr, and it really shows the ambition also that the bank has in terms of accelerating green investment across small and medium enterprises in particular. But maybe I don't know how many of you are interested in football, but I just wanted to say, sort of, if half of your team is not on the field, I mean, you're not going to score a goal, or the other team is going to score lots of goals because you're missing the goalkeeper. So, I mean, I think it's a truism that, we really need to have everyone being part of the team. And so women in financing in the banking industry, but also women in the green industry and accelerating the climate change agenda is really critical, because otherwise you're just missing people on the field. So I want to just talk a little bit of how we can help as EBRD and how we have worked with partners that have the same vision like Banque Misr to accelerate green financing. So we're working with some of our key products, the Green Energy Financing Facility, and I saw a few people who are part of actually the team that implements it in the room. We're doing green value chains because it's not only enough that if you're a company, you green your operations, but you also want to know what your suppliers are doing, what your distributors are doing. So how you can really green the whole value chain. And as a bank, if you lend to a big corporate, you would also may want to help them to green their value chain, not just green only their own operations. So green value chain, a big important element. And then of course we're doing work with women in business across a number of banks and microfinance institutions. We're also through Banque Misr working with microfinance. But I think what is important now is bring the two together, both in the financing, but also in the policy making. And actually, I just sort of came from a panel where together with Dr. Rania Al-Mashar, we launched the Green Equality Climate Accelerator. And actually, with our friends from Agence Française Développement and with also the African Development Bank, launching a tool where you can really just click as a company or as a public sector entity, and you can see, okay, what do I need to do in what area? Do I want to do a sustainability report? Do I want to go to net zero? And you can really see practically, do I need finance to do this? Do I want to, to have new policies? So I think that's also a way of using digital means, and that has been part of the success in working with institutions like Banque Misr to have digital tools to identify, so the green technology selector, to identify investment opportunities for the private and the public sector. So I think there's a lot to be done to accelerate the interface between green and female entrepreneurship, between green and gender financing. But I think it's important to have partners like Banque Misr. And so just to remember, we always want to have 11 players on the field. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Heike. I think you made a very good point there about the power of partnerships and how we need to work together with all of the other financing institutions to make sure that we have that balance between green financing, but also making sure that women have access to that green finance. So maybe I could, Kasil, did you want to talk next? Or okay, you had the microphone, so I assumed you maybe wanted to talk next. Maybe I could ask you how the FIs are supporting Africa and Egypt in increasing the availability of green finance as well for climate resilience and adaptation, taking into account the gender equity considerations. Maybe you could give us some examples of what AFD is doing as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased and honored to be on this panel on climate, as it is a important thematic for AFD, because we ensure in 2015 that 100% of our operation will be aligned to Paris Agreement. And we also are a feminist agency, so we have the objective to have more than 50% of our operations that contribute to gender equality. I'm sorry. And it's better like that. Yes, thank you. Sorry. So gender and climate is kind of core business for us, and we really do think both things can go together. Already 60% of our climate finance contribute to gender, and this is something we really care about. Maybe that's it. You can hear me? Yes, sorry. But this is not enough, and for us it's very important to share this experience and the experience we have with all other banks. Public Bank of Development are already financing 12% of global worldwide investment, and we really think that if they can mobilize on the climate and gender, it's a really good opportunity to scale up and change the world. So maybe you ask me for some examples. So what can be done? First of all, on the top of usual to support public bank of development, on the top of usual scheme of credit line and associated with technical assistance, we are deploying some innovative tools, and Heike talked about some of them. We are trying, and we have a credit line with TSKB in Turkey, for example, when it does not only focus on gender criteria like we usually do financing banking, but it's also a way to incentive structural transformation of the bank and their clients, and that's really what you are doing by doing by working on governance, training, action plan, gender action plans to fight against stereotype and together bridge the gap. Another example here in Egypt was signed last 3rd of November in Cairo with Banque Misr and National Bank of Egypt and also Banque du Caire in a meeting with the three banks and our CEO last week, including Chairman El Erebi. This program aims to accelerate SDG-aligned investment in Egypt, including grants for projects with a high gender and/or climate value added, and also provide technical assistance to make gender action plan for the clients and the companies that you're going to finance. Second example that we have done, and also in Turkey, but also in South Africa with some banks like DBSA and TKYB, was to help them to fulfill International Capital Market Association to make social bonds and to meet social bond requirement for insurance of thematic bonds. AFD committed first insurance in private placement. And third example, because it's very important also, and representation matters, is on the regularity side. And we help making measures of positive dynamic and representation of women in the governance of the banks. We did that also in France, and in France, since 2012, the law requires 40% of board members to be a woman. And as a consequence, in 2019, 43% of the boards of all the 120 largest French companies are women, whereas there were only 26% in 2030. So this works. And we really do think this can help change and bridge the gap. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So that was excellent, and I think it's really encouraging to see how the bilateral financing institutions, the IFIs, and the commercial banks are all working together to really promote the role of women, the empowerment of women, and also their access to finance. Clearly, there's a lot more that needs to be done, and I'm sure Rawia is going to tell us about this later on. But maybe I could turn to you, Burcu, and ask you, what is the role of impact investors like Finance in Motion in advancing green and SME finance in Egypt and beyond? And how can women SMEs' access to finance be further supported?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here today as well. Maybe I can start giving a little bit information about Finance in Motion and what we are doing. Finance in Motion is managing 9 different impact funds globally, all in emerging markets. Two of these funds that we are managing are also heavily supporting the Middle East and North Africa region as well. One on one side on the funding, and on the other side on the technical assistance facilities as well. So I guess we are working very closely with my colleagues in here, with IFC, VBRD and IFD as well. We're basically working towards the same goal, to create higher impact, to make sure that the institutions in here can comply with the United Nations Social Development Goals in the earliest time possible, and also to make sure that we are also supporting their green agenda as well. So maybe to start with the green agenda, we have the Green for Growth Fund, who has been active in MENA since 2016. So through the GGF fund, we are basically financing banks and other financial institutions, including leasings in the region as well. So far, we have disbursed more than $400 million to the region. But we are of the opinion that providing the financing all by itself is not sufficient, because the institutions who get the money, who receive the borrowing, should also be on lending these facilities in the sustainable way and for the right and eligible green projects as well. So apart from the funding, GGF has always also been providing technical assistance facilities. During this period, we have spent more than $3 million so far on the projects. We are working very closely with the banks. So Banque Misr is one of our partners since last year. We had a big financing package for the bank, but we are also working on the deep greening project to help the bank with having a climate the climate finance strategy and other green related topics as well. So we are also providing a lot of support on developing environmental and social management systems, policies, but also try to work with the other stakeholders on the ground to make sure that this green agenda item is very clear and we're all moving towards the same goal. On the SME side, we have a different fund, which is called Sanat. Sanat has been operative in the market for more than 10 years with a very strong team, locally also present in here. And I guess the one strength of the Sanat fund is that we have a very diversified portfolio, so we can work with the larger banks, where we can support for the banks to downsize and to go to relatively small clients, but we can also work with non-bank financial institutions, leasings, and we have a very good portfolio with the microfinance institutions all around MENA as well. And we can really go down to transaction sizes as low as 1 million if we see that there's really a strong impact and a very strong outreach to the vulnerable groups. Through the Sanat, we have disbursed more than 600 million, almost 700 million in the last 10 years. Again, apart from the funding itself, which is, of course, medium to long term, we are also providing a lot of technical assistance. We are doing a lot of hand-holding to the SMEs in here, but also to the banks. As I said, a lot of banks in the region still need a lot of downsizing because they are mainly at the medium to small level, but there's further need for the downsizing for the financial institutions as well. But we also think that this is not only about the impact lending and the financial institutions, but there are a lot of stakeholders on the ground who needs to work together. So there's also, we need to have the regulations in place. We need to have the credit agencies, the credit guarantee facilities to be active. We need to have a proper scoring system in place. So this is really a joint work, which we are also trying to facilitate and support. And also, as a note, Egypt is our largest market, it's our largest exposure, and we also have very strong, portfolio and impact on the ground as well. And maybe to touch the base with the women financing as well. Of course, maybe just as a note, around 45% of our end borrowers are Sanat, are women businesses. So we managed to reach out to these and women clients through the banks, but also through the other types of financial institutions as well. Again, in addition to the funding, we are working very closely with the women entrepreneurs. One critical point for us is that they need a lot of training, they need a lot of support, they need a lot of hand-holding. They need to learn, they need to understand how to run their businesses, how to manage their liquidity, how to develop products, sell their products. Because from an educational perspective, they are not at the same level as their men peers, unfortunately, and also for cultural reasons and many other things as well. But we also bring together these different women entrepreneurs as well, because they also share their experiences, which is extremely valuable for them to hear what their peers are doing in the same country, but also in the other countries as well. And it's always good for them to hear the success stories, to listen their success stories, which is extremely motivating. But apart from the women entrepreneurs, as I said, it's also very critical for the banks to be able to reach out to these women clients. So how we do that is we need to understand if at the beginning to start with, even the banks or the financial institutions have a definition of what a women-owned business is. So this is where we start from. Can you define a women-owned business? Can you understand, or differentiate it from the other businesses in the region? We basically start from there, and then we try to make sure that this could also be tracked, this could also be monitored and reported within their systems. So we also try to develop internally in the financial institutions, and then eventually the financial institutions need to see and understand what are the characteristics of these businesses, what are their needs, what are their level of knowledge and understanding of the business, and then based on all this information they need to develop their products and services on the financial side, but also on the non-financial side. So this is a very detailed work. This is a very long work. But as I heard from one of the colleagues through one of these panels today, this is not our work. This is our passion. This is our life. This is what we want to do all our life. So yeah, eventually we are 100% confident that this is going to be much better in the coming period for the region as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gasilda. I mean, I can feel the passion in what your sort of your interest and your determination to help these women entrepreneurs. And I think you made some very good comments about the need both for policies so that it's clear so we have a sort of like a framework within which to work. You also made a very important point about capacity building. So capacity building at the level of the banks that have the credit lines to really put in place the policies and understand what women entrepreneurs need and how they can target their products. I think you also made some very good comments there about helping the women entrepreneurs themselves, helping them understand how to access finance, how to develop their businesses. So you're very right. It's not just the finance, it's also about the capacity building and the support you put around that to make sure that it all comes together and all stakeholders are working together both within the financial institutions, but more importantly on the ground to make it happen. So thank you very much. Some very insightful comments there. Maybe I could turn to you, Amy, if I may, and ask you what are the challenges for women-led SMEs from your perspective in terms of access to green products, and how can financial institutions address those challenges? Amy, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think just before I get into the challenges and opportunities real deeply, I want to make the point, because I know there's bankers in this room and there's bankers online, that women are a great credit risk, right? For as many years as we've collected data, women-owned businesses in our bank's portfolios have had lower rates of non-performing loans than men-owned businesses, even during the pandemic. This is a good business to get into. And so Banque Misr knows this.
We are switching our portfolio to women.
Only. Perhaps. It's a good business to get into. And that's also why we want to make sure that the opportunities for women doing innovative client businesses are there for them to be financed as well, because they're great businesses. So in terms of the challenges, we do know that there is still a large credit gap for women-owned businesses. And we know in some cases, the capacity to run the business might be low, or the connections to get the capital might be lower than men's connections in the business community. We know that sometimes the contracts with large corporates are not there for women. We know that even the confidence may be lacking. So, thank you. So, we work on all of those fronts. And it might be that women-owned businesses in the climate space are even more disadvantaged because of perceptions bankers might have about their capacity, and because of their real capacity in some cases. Here in Egypt, only about 7.3% of women have STEM educational attainment. I will eat it. Okay. Only about 7% of women versus 15.3% of men have STEM-related skills. So there could be some capacity constraints. Now, in terms of what we can do about that, One thing we can do is work with banks like Banque Misr that have already established active banking on women or active gender finance programs. They're already looking at that market. So what can they do? And they've already connected with women-owned businesses. So what can they do to improve the climate resilience of those businesses? Perhaps target some of their green finance towards women-owned businesses, leverage the training programs, the networking programs, the mentorship programs that they've already developed in order to reach the women's market for a green women's market. So green the women's finance market. But conversely, you can also look at gendering the green finance that you're doing. So make sure that those loan officers and those bank employees that are working to distribute to the green finance are not being biased in the way they're looking at that. So the unconscious bias that you've already done on your gender finance side, bring it to the green finance side. Make sure that you get the bias out. You look for the opportunities because we know that they're there. Leverage the brilliant communications that you've already developed for the ZAT program, for example, to raise awareness about women in innovative climate space. For sure it's out there, and you've already got those channels going. So I think if we gender the green finance and we green the gender finance, we're already making progress in this regard.
Thank you very much, Amy. Some very wise comments there. And I was very, very interested to hear your comment when you opened saying that the NPLs for women entrepreneurs is lower than anything else. So it's a very good business to get into. It's a good message for the audience there. Mohammed, maybe I could come to you as all the banks have been talking about their green and financial products. Maybe you could tell us about the green and gender-focused financial instruments that Banque Misr offers, and what are your targets for improving gender inclusion?
Thank you, Sue. Banque Misr believes that gender equality is an essential part of sustainable development and a better future. Hence, Banque Misr is always keen on promoting women's representation on one hand, and on the other hand, providing finance for female-led businesses on the other hand. And we have Dr. Fatma Ibouli, our head of communication. We have Dr. Suzanne, our head of financial inclusion and sustainability. So this gives you a picture that we are always supporting women, and we believe that women are very intelligent and hard workers. Our being the core of our bank's strategy is empowering women, is converting with the core business of the UN Sustainable Development for promoting gender equality and also empowering women. And this is comply with the Egypt Vision 2030. Banque Misr has played a substantial role in merging the informal business owned by women to the formal economy, and this has given a positive impact on our GDP, and all our financial ratios has improved. I will give you an idea about Banque Misr has implemented for women prosperity and well-being. Our portfolio in SMEs, in micro and SMEs, in 2014 grew from 400 million Egyptian pounds. Now it is 56 billion Egyptian pounds. So we are the fastest growing bank in Egypt. 25% from the SMEs is forward to women, and 31% in the microfinance is also to women businesses. So this gives you an idea about our portfolio and about how much our portfolio has grew from 400 million to 56 billion in SMEs. We have launched the first express digital product from 2 years ago. These products contribute for SMEs and microfinance, small business and microfinance. In 5 days through the internet, you can get the approval on your loan or disapproval. It depends about the criteria. We have lent almost 18 billion Egyptian pounds in 2 years for the microfinance and for the small businesses as SMEs. I will give you back concerning that. Banque Misr is offering a dedicated value proposition for women in business that the name of the done in coordination with the IFC. It is the first comprehensive financing program designed to support Egyptian women. This program focuses on solution on two main aspects: access to finance and lack of advisory, and provides a variety of financing benefits and financial and non-financial services for businesses, women and female entrepreneurs, with the aim of assisting each and every woman to fulfill her dreams. The second one that we have signed lately, MOU, with the AUC to join the Women Economic Empowerment Entrepreneurship Support Project with the aim of reducing the gender gap in the Egyptian entrepreneurship ecosystem under the framework of the UN Women. In the same context, Banque Misr has engaged in several partnership and agreement, as I mentioned, the panelists, with EBRD, with AFD, Finance in Motion, AFDB, with the objective of tackling gender gaps in access to finance, as well as promoting green finance to SME. To give you a clue, the low and medium income countries needs at least 2.5 trillion US dollars yearly for combating climate change. Our African continent is the most vulnerable continent exposed to climate change. It is costing us between 5 to 15% on our GDP growth. Here comes the role of the financial sector. The financial sector has a huge potential to close this gap, but we should address before this the following: awareness. Awareness is the key starting point for this implementation. The government, the private sector, the banks have to believe that the green project is not only developmental, but they can produce economic values and returns for lenders and investors. This is the first one. The second one is changing the banks from conventional lending to a comprehensive ecosystem able to incubate, advise, finance, accelerate, monetize this type of products. The third one is to restructure the models of the bank to suit the new targets green projects. The fourth one is to accelerate the capital markets. It's very important to include in their strategy smart projects and to identify ways of raising capital. In my opinion, it should be preferably through digital and seamless solutions. I am happy, and I have to thank Dr. Mahmoud Muhyiddin and Ministry of Planning headed by, he came.
Yeah, here he is.
He came.
Right on cue.
I was thanking you, Dr. Mahmoud. So I will repeat it again. No, I will repeat it again. I have, before closing, I have to thank Dr. Mahmoud Muhyiddin and the Ministry of Planning headed by Dr. Hala Saeed and Ambassador Hisham Badr for implementing the national initiatives for green projects. They identified more than 6,000 green projects in different categories: large, medium, small, gender. I'm proud to say that Banque Misr is sponsoring this initiative, and we are going to finance and to give coaching and technical assistance to all these projects, which include gender green project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. I hope that this panel and all the people listening online is contributing a little bit to raising awareness of the need to really help push this agenda in terms of both green finance and green financing for women in particular. I'm delighted, Dr. Mahmoud Mohildeen, that you've been able to join us. And Mahmoud, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure you don't really need an introduction. He's the UN Climate Change High-Level Champion for Egypt. So thank you very much for joining us, and we really look forward to your keynote remarks. So over to you, the floor is yours.
Right. If you insist, okay, fine. It will help me to be awake
please.
while I'm delivering what I have to deliver. But thank you so much for this opportunity. And it's a great privilege to be with this panel. Upon entering, I found Mr. Litribi was referring to this unprecedented, yes, cannot be more green than this, yeah? It's like me in my village under the trees, but anyways. So the initiative, which is, I think, unprecedented, the veterans of the COP said never before we had this kind of campaign in preparations to raise awareness through practical way, through a national competition to select the best enterprises and initiatives in 6 categories, as Mr. Litribi just mentioned. We had more than 6,200 applicants, and I'm happy, given that we are in the Women's Day, that 1,045 women projects were submitted. And given that SMEs are with significant participation from women as well, there was some winners as well from the other categories. Less so from mega projects, but more in medium, more in small. Startup companies, we need to encourage women further. Non-profit community projects, we had some decent contribution from women. Just to give you a hint on what is working as areas in for implementation, 46 is recycling, and actually the 3 winning women-led projects are all to do with one form or another of recycling. We had from Alexandria, project led by Dr. Mona Rifat, who invested in environmentally friendly projects to develop some sophisticated 3-dimensional cutter from recycled material. A project from Fayoum, not far from Cairo. And actually, if you are in history, this has the best portraits ever that you can see in museum for more than 2,000 years. We have Ms. Samar Saeed with her Golden Hands initiative to empower economically working women through the recycling of date palm waste and manufacturing of essential household appliances. And then the third, which has a very interesting name in Arabic, Al-Khurda Bab Rizq. It's about recycling, renew, and reuse material to develop from recycling business accessories and other material. So when I was in Geneva, this was the last round of 5 that we had for the regional economic commissions. One of the experts in extractives, he said, well, instead of mining, you should know that the best mine for essential material, including rare material, is through garbage and recycling. So it's not really far from what these smart women are doing in their own domains of work. So Mr. Litribi, as always, a leader in the banking sector with many hats, Banque Misr, which is the second biggest and the second oldest bank in the country. And of course, you are the chairman of the Federation of Egyptian Banks as a federation. So we did that with good support from banks, and many of them helped as advisors to develop the projects and the project proposals. But we had a challenge from Dr. Hala Saeed, Somebody heard her calling the project is inspiring, which is true, but she has a target of 1 million projects. Well, this is going to be hard to achieve now. It's more even than the what we have in the domain in the database. But if you multiply the figure 6,000 to 60,000 by next year, I think that with the association that we should be having with you, with your bank, and with the Federation of the Egyptian banks, with the Federation of Industry, and with the Chamber of Commerce, and the Federation of Investment Association, and all of the women leaders here who are going to be gaining three things. First, and I have a bet with Dr. Magid Osman, who is the top statistician with his surveys, that he conducted a survey. He found that the awareness of climate action, to your point earlier, is around 35%. This is after improvement. So 65% of the population do not know what we're talking about here, and they are not to be blamed. It's us who have the responsibility to reach out practically and make matters simple and make climate action close to their day-to-day kind of challenges and solutions, linking it to water management, to food, to agriculture, to business opportunities, to access to energy. Here you get the person in the street more supportive. If we get it as it used to be elitist, there will be only few people in the room aware of what we're talking about. I'm happy to come as a layman actually in this domain because I'm coming from sustainable development and development finance. There are more veterans in this area who have been working forever doing that. It's basically about accessibility. So this is the first thing, raising awareness. The second one is drawing an investment map for the country based on green and smart. Both need to go together because through them both, you are going to be shaping the future of this country and beyond. The third, as it was in one of the meetings that was very well attended by Banque Misr as well, you had this initiative to bring the proposal globally and regionally through the UN system and the likes of EBRD and others. UNDP was there as well, and they committed some work. But more is basically to find some good finance and scaling up for those who can really be the stars of the future as leaders in business. We have decent businesses in emerging markets and developing economies, but what we need to have is basically more vibrant scale and business to enhance the capacity of the economy at large. Of course, more women, the better. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohaldeen, for those comments around awareness. It's very inspiring to hear about the award-winning women engaged in green and smart activities. And I think also you mentioned there about the working together of the institutions like the banks and the UN in order to really further this cause and raise awareness. Now, we've heard a lot from banks. I think it's high time that we heard from Rawia Mansour. We'd like to hear from her about her business opportunity and what she is doing to further the empowerment of women and the access of women to finance. She has a very nice presentation to show us. So Rawia, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very proud to be standing here in Banque Misr's conference. I am the client of Banque Misr, and I would like to borrow money next time from Banque Misr to make my project of green a larger project. I have dedicated my past 15 years being a little bit more, having a vision of a better world with sustainable development and going green by investing into sustainable green projects. It was my research center. I took land from Minister Abaza prior to the revolution and started doing my researches. We plant around 30 vegetables, and what I am happy to say is that through that R&D, I'm able to create fertilizers that are organic. The biggest problems facing Africa and the world now is food security. As Nirvan told me, they have 6 billion in the World Bank. Looking forward to taking those 6 billion for Africa for food security. Because if Africa doesn't have food security, the whole of the world is going to suffer. So I started doing my researches where we are, I have the center in the Egyptian Center for Research of Agriculture in Ismailia. I employ around 30 women. And I also have a company in Monaco called Oasis, which stands for Organic Agriculture for Social International Solidarity. And I would like this solidarity to be the way over in Africa, because Africa, I can tell you now, I have 2 patents. The first is biochar, a biochar machine. This is in my farm where we employ women. The biochar is one of the only way to mitigate and to adapt to climate change. And this project can take carbon credits. I have it at a small scale. We employ 30 women, we do 30 vegetables, and we are organically certified. We save 30% water, and on top of the drip irrigation, that will be 60% water, which is the main problem in Africa, water and food security, together with gender equality. As a person, I have dedicated my life to sustainable development and food security. But I would like to go global and spread it around Africa. And as Dr. Mahmoud Muhyiddin was telling me yesterday, you've been doing that for 12 years. I have been doing that for 12 years, but now I have the substitute of chemical fertilizers that deplete the soil, deplete the land, and also they pollute the rivers and canals. So by using those organic technologies that I have, we are able to save water and to have food security for Africa, not only for Africa, but also for the rest of the world. We are talking here about desert. I'm planting in desert, very bad arid land with very high salinity. And we are able to plant those 30 products. We employ women, we give equal pay. And I would like my project, as I said earlier, to go global with the help of Banque Misr and the international organization. Because if we don't have food security, we shall not have political stability. So, and usually, and especially after, as Dr. Baisley said of the World Bank, we have 222 million people who are under the line of hunger. And if we don't treat that, definitely the whole world is going to be a havoc. So I have a saying is forever is now or never. So if we can, I would like to also add that food security has the law of the 3 A's, which is accessibility, affordability, and availability. And the law for climate change has 3 laws also of C's, which is carbon. We're doing a carbon sink, and cost. We are cost effective. And the third thing is climate change mitigation and adaptation, because we do both, not only adaptation, but mitigation. And if this project is going to be extended to the rest of the world, I can say we will have a better world, not with a better world without poverty, with food security, and with food with traceability. Thank you.
Yes, sure. I think we're going to take a little pause for a photograph. Yes. Yeah.